Hello everyone, this is Randy Malden with Supply Leaders Academy, and tonight we are going to be talking about strategic sourcing plan. How do you put one of these things together? It's one of the main results you get when you go through our Supply Chain Mastery online program is the ability to put together a strategic sourcing plan. Now the reason this is important is because, there are concerns out there about our supply chains. It's one of those things that nobody likes to talk about, but everyone is always thinking about. And we're constantly putting out fires, reacting to things, when if we just took a little bit of time and did a little bit more planning, we would not have to be so worried all the time. 85% of CEOs surveyed believe that they could not survive a supply chain disruption. Meaning you've got natural disasters that are out there that could slow things down. We have blizzards, hurricanes, flooding, all kinds of things that could slow us down or stop our supply chain. And if we don't know what's going on in our supply chain, we don't know how to reroute or move things around so that we can meet our needs and fill requirements for our internal customers. When oil dropped, there was a huge issue, not only in the oil industry, but when the oil price dropped, it made the dollar stronger. And when the dollar became stronger, it made those goods that they were purchasing, American sold goods, more expensive overseas. So there were shifts in the supply chain there as well. Many businesses underestimate the threats to their supply chain because they simply just don't know where their suppliers are, where they're coming from. Even labor issues can affect our supply chain. When we have something going on in a port where the port labor decides to go on strike and we're waiting for those goods to come across the port, and that can affect our supply chain as well. And so what we'll have to look at is what's going on in our supply chain. And if we're strategic and we have a strategic sourcing plan, we understand those risks and we can take action to resolve those risks. 83% of CEOs do not believe their supply chain is optimized, which means they are leaving money on the table. When things get tough and they're looking to increase profits for shareholder value, they're looking to their supply chain. They're looking to their supply chain, which means that's important to have strategic sourcing as a capability within your company, not simply as a process that we have to follow. We don't want to process purchase orders. We want to enable strategic sourcing. Lots of small businesses can't even name their suppliers. They don't know where their suppliers are coming from, and therefore their supply chain problems become your supply chain problems. And when you think of it that way, you really start to look at more deeply into what's going on in your supply chain. Again, when there are needs to grow more profits, when there is less revenue coming in, you need to look to your supply chain to reduce those costs, to generate more profits, and sometimes even to enable your company to survive. Because the supply chain is the greatest source of stress in your company because it affects not only your ability to deliver to your customers, but also your ability to be profitable. We hear a lot about sales, generate revenue, generate revenue, generate revenue, but if that revenue is not profitable, then we don't have a company that's profitable. And that company's not going to stick around for very long. So today what we're going to talk about is how do we transform from strategic sourcing or from purchasing tactics to strategic sourcing so that purchasing can be a strategic advantage, a strategic capability for your company. Now, my experience has been that where I was in the Marine Corps for over 20 years, and I worked in all aspects of the supply chain, from maintenance and repair to ordering supply to managing supply chain to designing supply chains that operated throughout the world. What you see here is pictures of me and my career with my family, and it's been a lot of fun because of all the different things that I've seen and done, because at the end of the day, if your supply chain is not working, nothing is working, not only in the military operations, but also in industry. Even service industries where you're providing a service need to have a supply chain to provide those services. You can read more about this in several books that I've written that you can find on Amazon.com. One, Supply Chain Management by the United States Marine Corps. doing supply chain analysis, how to get more profitability from your supply chain, and of course how to pass the CPSM exams so that you can also be certified in supply management. There are many opportunities because most companies do not optimize their supply chain until it's too late. Meaning when they are running out of money, they're like, where do we reduce cost? And that's when they look to their supply chain. That does not need to be the case. It needs to be something thought of in the very beginning when the company is starting to perform, create value for customers, as well as once it's further along the lines, it needs to continue to bring value and look at their supply chain. A lot of companies are what they call supply chain introverts. They don't talk about their supply chain. They don't think about the supply chain, only when they absolutely have to. Incentives are not tied to supply chain improvements. So if we're not there to incentivize supply chain, why not? We have to wonder, because when we save $1 in the supply chain, that's $1 that goes right to the bottom line, right to profit. When we sell something that's worth $1, there's expenses behind that dollar. And a lot of companies believe technology will solve this problem. And technology is a tool. If you don't have the right concepts, the right techniques, the right processes in place, technology just enables you to do things wrong faster. And that's not what we want to use technology for. We want to use technology to enable us to be more successful faster. Because when we're successful with our supply chain, we realize that a 2.5% reduction in cost creates the same amount of profit as an increase in sale of 10%. Companies who manage their supply chain are 73% more profitable than companies that are not. And just think about the companies that survived this last recession and came through on the other end. Because ultimately, when you invest in supply chain management, you see a 40% return on investment, and sometimes even more when we're just starting to look at our supply chain because we haven't looked there before. As a result, when you start to implement strategic sourcing, you will transform from daily crisis to predictable resources because you're using strategic sourcing. Now, this is a format, a business plan format for a strategic sourcing plan, and we're going to go through each one of these areas so that you'll understand what goes into these areas so that you can write your own strategic sourcing plan for your company or for a commodity or category that you are responsible for managing. It starts with understanding the vision of the corporation. What is the corporation's vision? What are the business units' visions that support the corporation? And then we create our vision and mission to support the business units who in turn support the corporation. It starts with that overview of the business. What are we in business for? In supply chain, procurement, purchasing, sourcing, strategic sourcing, all the different titles that we have, all the different titles that fall under our career field. We are a supporting function, not a supported function, meaning we are there to help people be successful, not force people to comply with our needs so that we can be successful. We're there to help them. Strategic sourcing plan starts with goals. What are you trying to achieve? And I would recommend you sit down and look at your supply chain and say, what are the top 10 things we need to accomplish with our supply chain so that we can be more predictable and more profitable? Once we write down those 10 ideas, we want to prioritize those from top to bottom. When we write down those goals, we want to make sure they're SMART goals. SMART meaning specific, measurable, aligned with the corporate vision, realistic and timely, time-bound, meaning you're going to accomplish them by a certain time. Once you have those 10 written down, you have them in a SMART format, and you prioritize them 1 through 10. Focus on the top 3, maybe 4, and develop detailed action plans on how you're going to accomplish that goal. And the reason I say only 3 of the 10, 3 to 5 of those 10, is so that you can focus on those. If you go through all 10, you're not going to get them done realistically. So, about every 3 to 6 months, you're going to come back to the sourcing plan and you're going to improve it, knock off the goals that you've accomplished, reprioritize your goals, and then work on the next 3. Detailed action plans. The more detailed, the better. Once you've got the goals and the action plans, you're going to create a marketing plan. What is a marketing plan? Why do I need a marketing plan? for strategic sourcing? Because you have to get the stakeholders to buy into the message and communicate this plan throughout the organization so that people find value in strategic sourcing. They want to implement it. They want to make it happen. They want to make it happen. So you have to think about that. What is our message? Who are the stakeholders that we need to communicate this message to? And how are we going to communicate this message? Because one thing's for sure, if you don't communicate your message, somebody else will for you. And you want to be in control of that message to make it work for you. Develop your marketing strategy. So when you've identified your stakeholders, how do you align with their interests? So you're talking to the operations, the COO, the operations manager. You want to talk to them about how you're going to make sure that they never run out of things they need to be successful in operations. When you talk to the financial people, the CFO, you're going to talk about how you're going to reduce costs and make revenue more predictable, profitable, more predictable. You're going to focus on those stakeholders, make sure you align with all their interests, Make sure you give them the information the way they want to hear it, not the way you want to communicate it. Aligning with their interests is aligning that communication plan so that you are able to tell them what they need to hear to understand how strategic sourcing is going to help them. And then identify one point of contact in strategic sourcing that's going to be that point of contact. Because as you implement strategic sourcing, people are going to push back. And they're going to push back hard. And you want to make sure you reduce their ability to go around you, to go around the processes to one single point of contact. So that when you make exceptions, only one person is allowing those exceptions. And that helps you maintain discipline within the supply chain. You're going to develop a management plan. You're going to map out the processes. You're going to define metrics and measures of success. And you're going to maintain discipline to where people stay engaged with strategic sourcing. You're going to develop that management plan to make sure that's successful. You're going to look at your human capital plan. What do you mean by that? That is the people. That are the people involved with you to make this successful. Based on your prioritized goals, what skills do you need and what skills do you have? Identify those gaps and then either develop training to fill those gaps or hire people to fill those gaps. And when we hire people, we're going to work within the corporate process, of hiring. That means we're going to need to get the budget, we're going to have the approval and go through the hiring process, which takes time. That's why this is a strategic plan. You're thinking long term, 3 to 5 years down the road. And because it takes time to go through these processes, you got to think, okay, if I want to be at a certain state in my supply chain 3 years from now, I need to start hiring people now. Start that process, start asking for the money, getting the approval, go through that hiring process so that you can be successful. Look at what operations capabilities you have. Again, based on your prioritized goals, map the processes that you need to achieve those goals, and then identify the gaps in your operations that you need to fill in order to achieve those goals. It may be that you need to redefine some processes. You may need to identify some new people that are going to approve things. You may need some new technology that you haven't had before to help you fill those gaps. Whatever it is, you're going to look deep into your operations and define that and map those processes out, identify those gaps, and start to fill those gaps. What is your financial plan? Where are you going to get the money? All of these plans require resources because plans without resources are simply dreams. Simply dreams. And you need to work within the budgeting cycle of your organization so that you are able to receive the money when you need it. You need to request the money you need next year, this year. If you don't know what you need next year, how do you know what to ask for? You're going to think about people, hiring. You're going to need HR budget. You're going to need technology, new computers, new infrastructure, new equipment. It could be new computers. It could be new desks, new office space, new ways to work within your organization. What equipment do you need? All of this takes money, so you're going to look to see what is that money that I'm going to need and work within the budgeting cycle to get those resources. You start to put together your plan, you're going to do a risk analysis. What can go wrong? What's going to stop me from achieving my goals? What's going to help me or hurt me when I start to execute this plan? Once you identify all those problems, all those risks, you're going to determine what's the probability of this actually happening. If it does happen, what is the impact on me, on the plan, and what can I do to reduce that impact through management? What am I going to manage, and how am I going to manage to reduce the impact, mitigate that? And that's the process. That's it. It's not very difficult. However, it is something that requires time. It takes time. How do we fill in this information? How do we develop the skills, the information to execute and develop this plan and execute this plan? One of the ways you do that is going through the training Supply Chain Mastery. Within only 12 weeks, you can learn the things it takes to fill out this plan, to have a realistic vision, develop the communication skills, the marketing plan, identify what you need, the technology you need, how to develop those processes, measure those processes so that you can achieve efficiency in these areas. You're going to learn the fundamentals, which would not only enable you to do strategic sourcing, but also qualify you to earn the CPSM designation, the Certified Professional in Supply Management. When you go through this training, it'll be available to you 24/7. You'll have 12 months access to go through it, learn the skills, go for your certification. It's absolutely complete training that goes through it in detail. We have mind maps. We have a community on LinkedIn. You get coaching. You get leadership training. You get an additional training in diversity, which is a skill needed in large corporations to manage your small business program. And we will work with you to develop your strategic sourcing plan, actually coach you to create a plan that is going to be successful within your organization. Not only successful, but also enable you to present it to the decision makers so that you get the appropriate buy-in. If you're interested in developing your strategic sourcing plan and joining our Supply Chain Mastery Online, just go to cpsmtraining.com/store to learn more about the program and to sign up. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at info@cpsmtraining.com or call us at 877-680-0494, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. We're getting ready to start a class soon, and actually next week we'll be implementing and starting our brand new class for this spring, which will give you the live training. Ask all the questions you want, get all the coaching you need, so that by summertime you're going to have a strategic sourcing plan up and running and executing so that you can be more valuable for your organization. Please go out there and help us grow. Go out to LinkedIn and post. Supply Leaders Academy is awesome. Now I have my strategic sourcing plan to show ROI on my training investment. Your investment in time this evening will not be for nothing. You can definitely use what you've learned tonight to start implementing and creating your own strategic sourcing plan. Does anyone have any questions about anything? If you think of a question later, shoot me an email at info@cpsmtraining.com or give us a call at 877-680-0494, and we'll be happy to set up a coaching call with you so we can answer those questions and help you develop a strategic sourcing plan for your organization. With that, that's all I have for our formal presentation. I'll stay on the line for a few minutes to answer any questions. So go ahead and just type those into the question box, and I'll be happy to field those questions and answer those questions for you. Does anyone have any questions about anything? All right. Very good. Well, if nobody has any questions, again, feel free to shoot me an email at info@cpsmtraining.com or just give us a call, and we'll be happy to get on the phone with you and answer any questions that you have. I appreciate your time tonight. Look forward to working with you to help create a strategic sourcing plan for your organization and for whatever commodity you may be working with. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care, and goodbye.